Hey guys, it's Darwin, and today we're talking about the different types of backpacking food storage and what I prefer to use on the trail. All right, so today I'm going to be talking about a topic that I've never actually covered here on the channel, but I get a lot of requests for, and it seems to be a pretty common question, and that is proper food storage while you're out on the trail. Now, there are a lot of different ways that you can store your food to protect your own grub, but also to protect the wildlife that's out in the backcountry. But today I'm going to be mainly talking about what I've used over the years, over the 5 years of my trail experience, how I've stored my food, when I've stored my food, and why I've stored my food that way. So maybe it can help you make a decision on what you need for your next backpacking trip. Before we jump into the video, I am by no means an expert on this topic. I just know what's worked for me and what hasn't worked for me. Make sure that you're always checking the regulations of where you're going to be backpacking and hiking. Whether you're in a national forest, in a national park, or in a wilderness area, different places have different suggestions on what they want you to store your food in. So don't be a jerk, do your research, and don't screw it up for the rest of us. All right, so the first food storage method that we're going to talk about today is the one that's probably the most common for most hikers and backpackers, and what I prefer to use on the trail and what I've used for most of my career, and that is a food bag and hanging system. So what I typically use is a DCF food bag. This one is made by Hilltop Packs. I use a DCF one because it is waterproof, it's nice and lightweight, and a small rock bag, also made out of DCF, with 50 foot of slick line cord. The reason I like this system is because it's easy, it's lightweight. My whole system for the rock bag, the line, and my entire food bag only weighs 3.1 ounces. And well, I got my logo printed on here, which is pretty cool. But most hikers will use this system. And the main reason is because you want to get your food off of the ground when you're in a heavily trafficked area. And what I mean by that is if you're camping in very well-established campsites, take the AT for example. If you're at a shelter, chances are animals are used to food being around the shelter, so they're going to tend to come back to the shelter, whether it's a mouse, a raccoon, a squirrel, or even a black bear, to rummage for food. So doing something like a bear hanging system is a pretty good way to make sure that you're protecting your own grub and nothing is eating your food while you're out in the backcountry, so you don't go hungry, but also protecting the wildlife. In a lot of cases, animals like black bears can get into people's food, which makes them aggressive, and in some cases, the bears can be put down because they are a threat to people in the backcountry, which is pretty unfair because, that's the black bear's home, not really your home. I usually use something like the PCT method, which I'm not really going to explain in this video, but I will put a link down below to an awesome video showing you how to do a proper PCT method bear hang. And there's a lot of different methods that you can learn. Typically, to sum it all up, you want to get it about 12 feet off the ground, 6 foot away from a tree, and about 100 to 200 feet away from your camp. That way, just in case a black bear or some other type of animal comes to rummage for your food, because they can smell it in the middle of the night, at least it's away from your tent, at least it's far enough off the ground and far enough away from the tree to where they can't get out to it. Now, there are some cases where people have had their bear bags taken out of trees by bears. In my experience, and all the backpackers that I know and hikers that I know, out of all the 1,000 miles I've ever hiked, I have never seen that happen. I've never heard of that happen, but there are exceptions to every rule, and it does happen. Now, people ask me all the time, do I always hang my food? And the answer is no, I don't always hang my food. I typically will only hang my food from a tree, again, when I'm in a heavily trafficked area, when I know that there's going to be a lot of wildlife, when I know that I'm in heavy black bear country, right? When I'm in an established campsite or in a national park where animals are used to humans having food. But if I'm in a place that's not well established, if I'm kind of making my own campsite, if I'm out in the middle of the wilderness or in the desert, what I typically do is take my bear bag, put my food in it just like I always would, and then I set it outside of my tent. Now, there are a lot of people that actually sleep with their food, which I think is a horrible idea, not really because a bear is going to come into your tent and get you, but because I personally know people that have had mice chew a hole through their tent to get to their food. So what I will typically do is take my food and set it right outside of my tent door next to my trekking pole or tent pole that's holding up my tent. That way, if for some reason a mouse or a small rodent does come to get into my food in the middle of the night, I can hear it, I can wake up and kind of scare it away. In the 7,000 miles that I've hiked over 5 years, I've never had a problem with doing this. But again, there are exceptions to every rule, and please check the regulations of where you're hiking. Now, speaking of putting your food just outside of your tent or in it, which I think is a horrible idea, another option would be something like an OP sack. So these things are made by a company called Locksack, and basically what it is a giant Ziploc bag made out of an odor-proof material. It's basically like a very thick plastic Ziploc. It has the same type of closure. Now, I have personally used one of these in the past. In 2017, out on the Arizona Trail, this was my storage method of choice because I didn't want to hang my food because I was going to be in areas that weren't well established, because I didn't want to carry something heavy, and I didn't want rodents eating into my food. So I did carry one of these, and in my experience, I didn't really dig it. Just like any other Ziploc bag that you're going to take out in the backcountry, eventually they break, and I've had these little zipper things break a lot. That being said, again, exception to every rule, I know through hikers that have used these over thousands of miles, have never had a problem, and have had them last multiple hikes. But in my experience of what I've used in all the food storage, this has probably been my least favorite just because it doesn't last. It is very awkward once you get food into it and how you've got to jam it into your bag. But that is another option for food storage in the backcountry. Next up for food storage while you're in the backcountry is one that's become pretty common, one that is definitely a necessity in certain places that you backpack and hike, and one that most thru hikers have come to loathe, and that is the bear can. So there are a lot of different bear cans out on the market, whether it's the BV450, which is what I used on the PCT, the BV500, which is like the common bear can that most people have, or a super expensive carbon fiber bear cans. Bear cans have proven to be one of the safest and best storage methods while you're in the backcountry, simply because it's made out of a hard polycarbonate or carbon fiber, so something like a black bear or even a grizzly bear cannot get into it when it's properly used. That being said, it is very cumbersome and super heavy. Just this BV450, just this small little guy alone weighs 2 pounds, 1 ounce. Now, I did have to use this on the PCT in 2018 because I was going through some sections of the trail that required me to use a bear can. And that goes back again to just because I don't like it doesn't mean that I'm not going to use it. If I am hiking or backpacking or camping in a certain area that requires me to use one of these, I'm going to use one. Now, there are some hikers out there that actually prefer to use a bear can. Number one, because it's simple, right? You don't have to hang a line. You don't have to worry about rodents getting into it just outside of your tent. You don't have to take those chances. You can just open it up. You can store all your food in it. Some people use it as a seat or a table or something. And you just take it away from your tent. You set it upside down to make sure that nothing can crack open the lid and get to your food. So a lot of hikers do like using these. In my experience, again, they are bulky, they're heavy. I've never found a good way to put a bear can in my pack, whether it was the bigger BV500 or the 450. You either got to strap it to the top or fit it around everything else. For everyone that is constantly asking me, yes, I can fit this small BV450 in the pack that I currently use, but I rather not. And you don't have to buy a bear can. If you're going to be hiking in most places where you can just use a bear bag, but say once out of the year you're gonna go hike in a place like Yosemite National Park, you can rent a bear can from the backcountry office or some independent outfitters. But again, the bear can is another great option for food storage. Just know that it's gonna be a little heavier and it's definitely gonna be kind of a pain to put in your pack. And the last option for food storage while you're in the backcountry kind of strikes a balance between the old heavy bear can and the bear bag, which is something like the sack. So basically what an sack is, it's just a stuff sack. It has a big cord on the top to where you can cinch it once you put all your food in there, and it is made out of a Kevlar-like material. There's a couple different models. This one in particular is made for bears. It has been certified by the people who certify things that are bear proof, that bears cannot tear into this. Grizzly bears cannot tear into something like the sack. However, I think on this model, which is the sack Major, apparently rodents can eat into this, which still kind of blows my mind that if it's made out of a Kevlar material that a rodent can get into it, but a grizzly bear can't. But I digress. This would be a really good option for someone looking to strike that balance between both. And I actually picked this up for my thru hike of the Great Divide Trail up in Canada, mainly because I've never tried one before. I know a lot of people that prefer to use an sack, and I was going to be in grizzly country, which kind of makes me want to protect my food a little bit more. Basically, you put all your food in it, and then you can put it up in a tree, or because of this long cord, you can tie it to the trunk of a tree. That way, if something does come to get it, if a bear does come to get it, they cannot get into the bag. Now, I have heard that bears can still smell the food in there and they can crunch things up. So using something like the OP sack inside of here would definitely guarantee that rodents wouldn't smell into this bag and eat into it, because apparently they can. And it would give you a little bit of extra protection from bears if you're in something like grizzly country. And I guess the biggest advantage to using something like this over the bear can is where that bear can comes in at just over 2 pounds. This guy is only over 8 ounces. So still a nice lightweight option that helps protect your food, helps protect wildlife, and gives you a little bit more security than the old DCF food bag. So as you can see, there are a lot of different options for food storage while you're out on the trail. But again, it really comes down to checking the regulations of where you're gonna go hiking and backpacking and making sure that you're following good leave no trace principles. I gotta stress, yet again, please play by the rules while you're in the backcountry. Don't screw it up for the rest of us, and do what the place is requiring you to do. Whether that is a big, clunky, heavy bear can, which again, I loathe, whether you can get away with just hanging a bear bag, and you're willing to take that chance with it, or doing something like an sack if the place that you're hiking in says that you can use these. It's all about checking those regulations, folks, and it's all about making sure that you're playing by the rules. Because at the end of the day, it all comes down to protecting your food to make sure you don't go hungry while you're out on the trail, but also protecting and respecting the wildlife that you're sharing the backcountry with. So what backpacking food storage do you prefer to use on the trail? Or what do you have to use depending on where you typically hike? Leave me something down below and let us know your thoughts. If you found any value in this video, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and as always guys, thanks for watching.